For all young men who want to find a virtuous wife. Here's a good verse, young men. 1 Timothy 6:11, but thou, O man of God, flee these things. Follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. Did you hear that word, meekness? That's humility, that's gentleness. If you're a young man and you're looking for a wife, it might be well for you to consider reading the book of Ruth. And if you're a young lady that would like to meet a good young man, you also might want to read the book of Ruth because it's a love story. It's a story about a family. And I'll summarize the book of Ruth as quickly as possible by simply reminding you that an Israelite family had gone to live temporarily in the land of Moab. You remember the story. And the man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. And they had gone into the land of Moab because of a great famine. While they were there, or even before they arrived, they had two sons named Mahlon and Chilion. Some possible names. Chill out. And while they're in the land of Moab, eventually these two boys grow up and get married, and one marries a girl by the name of Orpah, and the other one was named Ruth. The other one was named Ruth. So in the process of time, unfortunately, tragedy comes to Naomi. Her husband, Elimelech, dies, and thereafter, at some point in time, both of her sons, married now, die. All three widows are left stranded in life in that story. Orpah goes back to her family, but Ruth, when Naomi decides to go back to Bethlehem, Judea, where she had originally lived, Ruth decides to go back with Naomi. And you'll remember the famous words of Ruth, whether thou goest, I will go. Thy people will be my people, and your God will become my God. Beautiful words found in the book of Ruth. So they arrive back in Bethlehem, Judah, and Naomi is a poor widowed lady, but the caring, loving attitude of her daughter-in-law, Ruth, who had never had a child, has devoted her life to caring for this widowed lady. When they arrived back home, the custom was for the poor people to go out and to glean the corners of the unharvested field. So as it happened, of course by chance, or shall we say by divine providence, it so happened that Ruth went out to glean in a field owned by a very wealthy single young man whose name was Boaz. And so Ruth is gleaning in a field owned by Boaz, who comes out to just look over his fields. And in the process, he sees some people gleaning. That's fine. He knows that's for the poor. But he sees a young lady there that he didn't know. And he goes over and speaks to her. Something is attracting him to this girl. So he goes over to the young men and says, hey, leave her alone. Don't touch her. Now, he's the owner of that field, and all the reapers are his hired employees, so he has the authority to do that. Now, as time goes by, Boaz not only tells Ruth that she is to stay in his field and glean, but he tells the reapers to purposely leave some for this lady. And he has already discovered that she is caring for Naomi, who is a relative of his. So he's overwhelmed by a young woman who's taking care of his widowed relative who has come back from a long, long stay in the land of Moab. And he's really impressed. So he tells his reapers, look, leave some grain for this lady, and I want her to be able to drink and to eat from our provisions. When Ruth discovers this lavish treatment, she goes to Boaz and she says, how did I ever deserve such treatment, such hospitality? She is amazed that anyone would care to make life a little easier for her and her widowed mother-in-law, Naomi. And you know the rest of that story, because in due time, Ruth becomes married to Boaz, and from that union is born a little boy that's going to become the grandfather of King David. That little boy's name is Obed. He will become the grandfather of King David in the messianic line that will bring Jesus into the world. It's a wonderful story to prove that like attracts like. You attract what you are, not what you want. If you want to be a humble person with your strength under control, it means that you will know how to speak the right words at the right time. So that's one of the ways that this Beatitude can bless God's children. The story of Ruth is really a very wonderful story. So let me remind all the young men here, young ladies in search of a spouse, you will attract what you are, not what you want. If you live to sow your wild oats, don't expect to find a girl that refrained from sowing hers. It could happen, but the chances are very remote. Now, the Bible tells us in 1 Peter 3:4 the qualities of a young girl that a boy would really be blessed to find. Let me read the description of a good young lady. 1 Peter 3:4. But let it be the hidden man of the heart in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and a quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Outward beauty, boys, young men, outward beauty in a girl may look wonderful for a time. But in due time, the years will go by, and her outward beauty someday may not be able to be doctored up with cosmetics. The wrinkles will just come anyway. But there's an inward quality of the character that will not fade away and will not grow wrinkles and will require no cosmetics. No false eyelashes, no nothing. The inward qualities of a meek, humble, gentle spirit in a woman will grow more and more priceless with time, so that the older the woman gets, the more beautiful inside she becomes. And that husband is going to love that woman so long as she breathes. Now, there's nothing wrong with outward beauty, but inward beauty never fades away. It's always going to grow in importance. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he will have no spoil. She will do him good all the days of her life. Proverbs 31:10 through 12. Now, when young women are looking for a gentleman, a boy, boys, to find a good wife is the greatest single treasure God will ever give you on this earth.
Amen.
Can you say amen to that? Anybody?
Amen.
In fact, the Bible says, he that findeth a good wife obtaineth a favor of the Lord. Proverbs 18:22. The Bible says, a house and riches are the inheritance of fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Proverbs 19:14. So young women are looking, good young women, I need to qualify that. Good young women are looking for a gentleman. Now, what is a gentleman? Because a gentleman is a Beatitude number 3 man. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What are the traits of a true gentleman? When Robert E. Lee was president of Washington College, he was asked for a copy of the rules for his college. Robert E. Lee responded by saying, young man, we have no printed rules. We have but one rule here, and it is that every student must be a gentleman. This is the only rule that Lee had in his college. What is a gentleman? By definition, he is a Beatitude number 3 man. A gentleman does not lie, cheat, or steal. Nor does a gentleman tolerate lying, cheating, and stealing in other people. The following statement was found among Lee's private papers after he was dead. Lee went on to say, the manner in which an individual enjoys certain advantages over others is the test of a true gentleman. He went on to write a lot more about the definition of a gentleman. But we could summarize who a gentleman is by saying simply, a gentleman does not gossip, spread rumors, run down other people, seeks to protect the integrity of both himself and the people around him. That is a gentleman. A gentleman, number 2, knows that anything worth having is worth working hard for. He does not expect shortcuts, free rides. There are no compromises for a gentleman. Number 3, a gentleman knows the difference between confidence and arrogance. No one likes to deal with an egotist and a show-off. On the other hand, a bit of self-confidence makes a man come across as admirable. Number 4, a gentleman is open-minded but firm in his beliefs. He will entertain the ideas of others, but he's not going to compromise his own belief system to go along and get along. Number 5, a gentleman constantly proves that chivalry is not dead. It's a way of life for a true gentleman. Number 6, a gentleman means what he says. He says what he means. No doublespeak. No reading in between the lines. A gentleman knows what he believes, is open to new truth, but not to throw out truth that he's already known and established in his mind. Number 7, for a lady, a gentleman always offers his seat and opens the door. This is not a sign that the woman is weak, but rather it's a time-honored, gentlemanly thing to do, to open the door for a woman and to give her your seat. That's just what gentlemen do. Number 8, a gentleman never judges another person to humiliate them. He knows that judging another person does not define who they are. It defines who he is. A gentleman has a firm handshake and will make eye contact with the person he is shaking hands with. A gentleman does not have a weak, limp handshake. He looks into the eye of his visitor and shakes the hand heartily with eye contact. And finally, a gentleman always offers to pay and not allow the girl to pick up the tab. Now there's another blessing from the Beatitude. Blessed are the meek. Meekness communicates humility, diffuses conflicts, disarms critics, is persuasive, attractive, and it transmits love. Yes, the quickest way for a husband to transmit love, true love, is to communicate to your wife in a humble, gentle way. Speaking with the right tone of voice will go a long ways to make a good marriage. You're never going to attract a positive response to a woman with harsh, crude, rude, pompous talk. A man shows meekness in a marriage when he has his physical strength, including his emotions, under control, and instead of shouting at his wife, he keeps his cool, lowers his voice, and communicates humility. And immediately he opens the heart of his wife when he's humble. Not looking at a pushover husband, we're looking at a husband who keeps strength under control. After all, the Bible says, husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Colossians 3:19. If you dissect the word bitter there, it's talking about being angry at your wife. Why would you want to treat the most treasured person in the world anyway, but the best way you can? So a humble spirit is a forgiving spirit, isn't it? Do you know that forgiveness is the glue that holds a marriage together? Husbands and wives are not perfect, so every day one or the other of them is in danger of offending the other party. That's why habitual forgiveness in marriage is the number one rule for a good marriage. Every day you forgive. And why do you forgive? Because we were forgiven by Jesus. And we will never forgive anyone for all that Jesus has forgiven us. The same holds true, church, in relating to your children. Talk to your children reasonably. Talk to your children so that you communicate to their hearts, not out of fears of who you are. Fathers, expect the best from your children, but don't demand absolute perfection, because they are not going to be perfect all the time. Children will make mistakes. Young people will not be perfect all the time. Expect the best from your children, but don't push them beyond the point of what they are capable at their very best of doing. You kill their spirit. You exasperate them. You frustrate them. But on the other hand, don't be a weak-kneed father and just let your children come home with D's when they've got a good mind. You've got to balance this all out. Then there's still another way that this beatitude can bless us. Meekness or humility earns respect in leadership. It is said that a good leader includes clarity of vision. Someone who has vision, think of this, husbands and fathers, has clarity of vision. He knows what he wants for his family. He exudes confidence, courage, integrity, focus, a positive attitude, responsibility, enthusiasm, and accountability. But I left out one important ingredient. Ingredient is called humility. Why is meekness so important for a good leader, a good father, a good anybody that's in leadership? Why is humility so important, church? So important. There have been many great leaders in the history of our people. Consider George Washington, who is called a gentleman, one of the greatest leaders of our whole country. One of the greatest leaders in the Bible was Moses. Against incredible odds, Moses led a nation of enslaved Israelites out of Egypt in the great Exodus, took them into the Sinai wilderness, and led them for 40 years. Did you know, church, that only 2 people in the Bible are called Meek? Only 2 people that I'm able to find. Moses and Jesus. Numbers 12, verse 3 says, Now the man Moses was very meek, humble above all the men which upon the face of the earth. Do you know that Moses was the most humble man that God said walked the earth? The greatest leadership quality that Moses possessed was his humility. Only 3 times in his life did Moses lose his humility. Number 1, he killed a man in a fit of anger. An Egyptian, though I'm not justifying that. Number 2, Moses broke both tables of the commandments when he got angry. When he came down from the mountain and watched the golden calf being made. And number 3, when God told him to go speak to the rock, he got angry and smote the rock, and it cost him his permission to enter into the promised land. Only 3 times does the Bible record Moses losing it. That's pretty good in 40 years. David was one of the greatest leaders in ancient Israel. You know the story of David. At age 17, he faces Goliath. And all the armies of Israel had melted in fear. And a 17-year-old boy dares to go face Goliath. You know the story of David. As king, David gathered all 12 tribes into a confederation, organized them into a strong, powerful United Nations, not to be equated with the UN. And David became their king. And David was one of the greatest kings that ever lived. His monarchy became the prototype for the future monarchy of Jesus himself. The restoration of the Davidic monarchy with Jesus is the ultimate goal of history. David, one of the greatest leaders that ever walked the face of the earth. Yet, David, one day, did a meltdown, lost his character, committed a terrible sin with Bathsheba. But why was David